I need a haircut. Hello everybody. Been a little while. I hadn't expected to take this long to post next, but I've been in a lot of thought lately about everything. Moving on from that terrible introduction, my name is Charlie. You will only call me by Charlie. Don't you dare ask questions. If you ask questions, I'm gonna murder you. Okay? I'm gonna murder you. It's like the first time I've ever been recording when it's not 10 PM, so you won't hear my dad showering. Also, if you want updates on the Tomodachi Life Island, which I doubt anybody really cares about, I'll post them on community posts. But here are the news I made for Hauntology, Marut, and Luna Punk. I don't know if my hands will be in. Okay, anyway. Today we're covering Synthwave, Goblincore, and Cyberdelia. A lot has happened, but also not much at all. I covered it a while ago in a community post, but my exams are over, so now I'm probably getting the best summer of my life. Why that has to be when I'm 16? Because I don't have a job, and it's going to be the last long summer I have without responsibilities. Like my sister, she's in uni. If she's not at uni, she's at work. So it's like, I gotta make this time worth it, bro. Because it's my GCSE holiday, but for my A-level holiday, I'm gonna probably have a job. Pested to have a job. Moving on to the video, the first aesthetic is... Synthwave is an aesthetic based on electronic music and its visuals. Emerging in the mid-2000s, it relies heavily on analog synthesizers which evoke a retro-futuristic atmosphere of the 1980s science fiction and action media, as well as characterized by references to 1980s pop culture. Okay, so Outrun and Retrowave are also used like alongside Synthwave. I'm gonna go over them, but I would like to point out that they are not Synthwave. They are Synthwave. Synthwave is not them. Synthwave is the umbrella genre, whereas Outrun is like the driving, focused visual aesthetic and early arcade style sound, and Retrowave is like the optimistic, vocal heavy and pop oriented style, okay? They're two different things under one umbrella aesthetic genre thingy, okay? Okay. Key pioneers include the French artist Kavinsky, whose tracks like Testarossa Auto Drive established the genre's driving cinematic sound, and David Grelier, founder of the Valerie Collective. This collective, which included artists like May Thelvin and Anorak, focused on a nostalgic, romanticized version of the 1980s youth culture, distinct from the more aggressive sounds that would develop later. The genre achieved global recognition following the creation of the film Drive in 2011. The film's soundtrack featured Kavinsky's Night Call, which played earlier, and College's A Real Hero, exposing the sound to a mainstream audience and establishing the genre's association with its recognizable driving imagery. Its popularity was also accelerated by the 2012 release of the video game Hotline Miami. The game's soundtrack featured high-tempo, aggressive soundtracks from artists like Perturbator, Moon, and Carpenter Brut. This introduced a darker, more violent edge to the genre, leading to the development of the dark synth subgenre. As Synthwave and Outrun are closely linked, as I mentioned earlier, Outrun being a branch from the Synthwave tree, as I mentioned earlier, I'm repeating myself, what the hell? Its visual style is very similar to one another. Oh my god, this is terrible script. They're not trying to attempt to accurately document the 1980s as they historically occurred. Rather, it curates a specific, hyper-stylized memory of the decade, filtered through the lens of science fiction, action cinema, and arcade culture. The aesthetic is defined by a high-contrast atmosphere that prioritizes cinematic lighting and retro-futuristic geometry over realism. The most popular symbol of the genre is the retro sun, a setting sun composed of horizontal stripes that typically gradient from bright yellow to deep magenta. This is frequently paired with the laser grid, representing a digital landscape or cyberspace. These abstract backgrounds often serve as the stage for the genre's fixation on the 1980s automotive design. Italian supercars are standard fixtures, often depicted speeding through neon-drenched cityscapes or coastal highways lined with silhouetted palm trees. The colour palette is strictly curated to emphasize this nocturnal vibe, relying heavily on deep blacks, cyan magenta, and violet. often accented with chrome textures and metallic typography that utilises fonts similar to the 1980s airbrush art. Okay, now synthwave visuals are often confused with the related vaporwave genre. These two possessed distinct artistic goals and differences, like in their tone. So synthwave visuals are characterised by an earnest, energetic celebration of 1980s pop culture, focusing on cool motifs like speed, technology and heroism with a polished, high-definition finish. In contrast, vaporwave utilises a softer, more pastel-heavy palette that often incorporates low-fidelity, glitched or surreal imagery to create a tone that is satirical or melancholic. It also focuses on a lot of brands and such, and I think it has like something to do with, I didn't put much research into vaporwave, so take this with a grain of salt, okay? But I think it has something to do with the mass consumerism that happened in the 1980s. You know, it was a decade that was very Moorish. Bigger hair, more money, brighter colours, and I think it was just like pointing that out, you know? Boundaries between the two are permeable. They're not interchangeable and should not be used interchangeably. Now that that's over, how about we have a change of scenery? That's better. I just feel like it would be fitting for the next aesthetic, that being although sorry that I'm like holding my phone up and recording this and also looking at my script. There's nowhere really good to put it, so I'm just gonna have to like do that. Sorry if you see my double chin. Fuck's sake. Goblincore is an aesthetic based on the appreciation of aspects of nature that aren't regarded as beautiful, such as frogs, snails, moss, mud, plants and fungi, named after the goblin, a creature from European folklore, where in Goblincore the goblin represents the love of nature's ugliness. Goblincore was popular in the LGBTQ+ community, especially among non-binary and trans-masculine people, where enjoyers often collect and hoard small shiny objects, similar to corvids. These objects are known as shinies, and many are involved in the vulture culture movement as well. Visually, Goblincore uses natural motifs, such as snails, slugs, mushrooms and moss, frogs and toads, forests, bugs and earthy tones, which is why I'm here, all of which contribute to what is considered ugly in nature. Whilst forests themselves tend not to be ugly, they contain all these ugly things, and therefore are also considered in the aesthetic. Maybe a bad example, but if you think of something refreshing, you tend to think of water, and in the context of water being refreshing, one pictures a glass of water, so the glass is also considered refreshing visually in this context, because it contains water. Or that could just be me. Another major motif is that being antiques. Many Goblincore images contain old, tarnished jewellery or jewellery and accessories made of discarded rubbish, or nature such as soda tab necklaces or flower crowns, which emphasises this corvid or crow-like behaviour to find value in something thrown away and considered useless. Fashion in Goblincore is also very natural in the sense that it tends to use clothing suitable for adventuring into fields and forests. But most fans also enjoy getting dirty, reflecting in their clothes, where a lot of the clothing is worn out or second-hand, as well as many enjoyers of the aesthetic using several clashing patterns or colours, wearing cosy oversized sweaters, lived-in jeans or overalls, and unique socks are also staples in Goblincore fashion, as well as worn Converse and boots. To emphasise their love for nature, the colour palette tends to be earth tones, such as green or brown. The aesthetic can be recognised in media such as Studio Ghibli films, like Howl's Moving Castle and My Neighbour Totoro, as well as other films including The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth and The Never-Ending Story. Literature include Frog and Toad series by Arnold Lobel, Goblin Market and Other Poems by Christina Rossetti, and The Tree Stump by Chris Forbes. Yes, many of them are children's books. Shut up! If anybody complains that people are too old for children's books, they are far too immature for anything else. However, the aesthetic is most popularly recognised in its music, where popular artists include the Oh Hellos, Cavetown, The Teague, Ye Loca and the Crane Wives. Prominent songs being Boys Will Be Bugs by Cavetown, Soldier Poet King by the Oh Hellos, Harpy Hair by Ye Loca, and The Milk Carton by Madeline May, which I personally find appalling. I despise that song. Surprisingly, the Goblincore aesthetic has faced some criticisms due to the usage of goblin. This is due to goblins, especially when depicted as ugly creatures obsessed with shiny things, have been used as a caricature for anti-Semitic or Judeo-Mystic, anti-Jewish stereotypes. So people have suggested to alternatively refer to it as Gremlincore, Crowcore or Dragoncore, as well as there being other, less popular options.
Whilst Goblincore may not be inherently anti-Semitic, I really do not feel like I'm in the correct position to define whether something is harmful towards a group I have not ever been in, am not in, and likely never will be in.
Moving back into my room and onto what is arguably the strangest aesthetic I've covered, which isn't that big of an achievement considering this is only the 9th aesthetic I've covered. This is a counterculture movement emerging from the late 1980s to mid-1990s, combining cyberculture with psychedelic subculture, where the name combines cybernetic and psychedelic. The term Cyberdelia describes using technology to alter states of consciousness, making it seem as if immersion into cyberspace would be a psychedelic experience. The movement used technology as a tool for transcendence, pointing out the similarities between the experience one has using psychedelic drugs and the limitless possibilities of virtual reality. Whilst it shares some elements with cyberpunk, Cyberdelia is optimistic, it's fucking optimistic, which contrasts with the dystopian themes that cyberpunk tends to contain. The roots of Cyberdelia can be traced back to the 1960s hippie era, where a man named Dr. Timothy Leary became a key figure in the psychedelic movement. Which makes sense, because he was also a leading advocate for LSD in the 1960s, and he's famously quoted for saying, "The PC is the LSD of the 90s. Whatever you say, buddy. And also encouraged a new generation to turn on, boot up, jack in, where he obviously saw PCs, the internet, and VR as not only tools, but gateways to new forms of consciousness and a more enlightened, decentralized society. So basically a new 1960s. Personally, as someone who has grown up with technology all the time, I owned a Nintendo DS, 3DS, and was given a first generation iPad in 2013. I still play on my childhood Nintendo Wii. My favourite game is Pokemon Poké Park. I love Pokemon. As well as typing the script on my laptop whilst watching YouTube on my iPad, using my Beats headphones and frequently checking my phone to see if anybody's contacted me due to my destroyed dopamine receptors. Typing this while looking at my iPad and reading this off of my phone. I doubt I will ever experience what the people experienced in the 90s and 80s, where something as big as computers and the internet exists. And it just seems so absurd for people to find a correlation between psychedelic drugs and computers. Yet there was one! Isn't that crazy? Aesthetic flourished with the rave scene, unsurprisingly. The visual language of Cyberdelia was highly featured in club visuals and the early computer art. The movement reached its peak with the 1995 film Hackers. The film's use of a nightclub named Cyberdelia helped to popularise the term and its visuals, yet by the late 1990s the popularity of this movement lessened, preferred by the sleek aesthetics such as metal art and Y2K futurism. Visually, Cyberdelia uses chaotic and vibrant psychedelic art and early digital technology, which is an attempt to represent a technologically intrused trip. That was so hard to say. This is like my 6th take. A good example of this game is LSD Dream Emulator, made in 1998, which I find is an incredibly interesting experience. I'm so passionate and so angry at my voice I can't speak. It is defined by its use of early primitive computer-generated imagery, such as low polygon models, which were used to create complex and hypnotic visuals like fractal art. I was yapping, bro. That does not make sense. Maybe it does. I don't know, I was just so focused on getting words out. My tongue is not working today. This artwork is used with the palette of acid colours, featuring highly saturated neon and fluorescent colours set against dark backgrounds, said to mimic rave lighting. Which it does. Distortion is also used to enhance the feeling of sensory overload and virtual transcendence. The aesthetic is further grounded by reoccurring motifs from its countercultural origins, including rave symbols like the smiley face and imagery associated with hacking. The music used within Cyberdelia is rooted in the electronic music of the late 1980s and early 1990s rave scene. Obviously, genres like acid house, psytrance, and breakbeat are the foundations of the aesthetic. The music is characterized by its repetitive electronic beats, psychedelic synth lines, and samples from scientific or philosophic lectures. The music of D-Light, especially their 1990s song Groove is in the Heart, mentioned earlier, and I was playing it earlier, is regarded as the model for psychedelic songs. Thank you for watching until the end. I don't feel very happy with the script, but I have been recording this off for so long. I don't know how to improve it. I probably should though. A lot has happened as of late, and I'm excited to carry on this channel and maintain something I had beforehand. Maintain something. Yeah, right. Also, if you could tell me how to improve, I would genuinely really appreciate it. Like, I can handle positive and critical feedback, since I want your experience watching my videos to be as good as I can make them as a broke 16-year-old recording on my iPad and editing on CapCut. Okay, cool. Bye.
Alright.
You started recording on your phone.
Oh shit, yeah. Alright. I really hope I can make it match up, because if not, I'm gonna die. If the audio is like a little off.
I know people do like a clap, because it's like a visual and audio thing.
Shit, hold on.